Chapter 31. Hellfire Spiderweb. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Irene. Editor. XAI. Huey's concentration had never been so fixated. The contestant before him was the strongest he had encountered so far. Showcasing superior skills, the obvious gap in strength killed all suspense as to who would claim victory, but this strangely galvanized AI Hui even more. Passionate, red-hot blood flowed in his veins like molten lava. He was moved by the fact that he was about to challenge one of the legendary absolute arts. Although his right arm was numb, hanging limply from his shoulder, and his vision was obscured in the darkness, his unprecedented focus led to an enhancement of the six senses. AI Hui clearly sensed his opponent, who didn't bother to conceal himself. From the strange handstand to the heat emitting from his palms, AI Hui could feel even the faint flickers of energy rippling along the ground. The motion of the elemental energy was minute, and AI Hui had not detected it earlier. The surprise attack he had launched earlier had probably been detected through this weak energy web. The other side had already quietly cast an inescapable net, waiting for prey to intrude. Absolute art indeed, AI Hui admired. Setting traps was a technique he was also proficient in, but he had not previously detected this snare at all. Evidently, his rival had next-level skills. He suddenly thought of Lu Lan's earlier words. That guy could cast the Hellfire Spider Web. The spider was an arthropod that AI Hui was familiar with. He had seen all kinds of spiders in the wilderness. Both the Flaming Heavenly Spider transformation and Hellfire Spider Web appeared to be related to spiders. Perhaps this principle could lead to victory. Techniques were not named carelessly. Their names, more often than not, represented their characteristics. AI Hui knew how to catch spiders like the back of his hand. His heart stirred. Could it be? His figure flashed as he abruptly charged forward. At the same time, he felt his opponent's body shift slightly. Indeed, as AI Hui had deduced, the almost undetectable weak ripples on the ground were actually part of an extensive invisible network. His opponent was like a spider waiting within a spider web. The moment an intruder entered any corner of his web, it fell under his control. In such a short moment, AI Hui could not think of a better idea. This was the first time AI Hui had met an opponent who was vastly superior. Hellfire Spider Web was undoubtedly the most suitable technique to use in a blind battle. Since you do not dare to attack, let me. Zhu Yan became impatient. He yelled loudly and initiated an attack. He smacked his flame-clad left palm on the ground, and his body fiercely lunged toward AI Hui. The darkness did not affect his aim at all. Borrowing the force of his lunge, his straightened legs garnered elemental energy, and he once again dove at AI Hui like a sturdy hatchet. The sharp, sky-rending sound that followed brought with it the billowing crackle of flames. The ferocity of his attack was incomparable. Even the audience was awestruck by the sheer force of Zhu Yan's kick. As the attack approached, AI Hui found himself beset by a feeling of helpless entrapment as the wind roared in his eardrums. His heart palpitated, but like a weak candle flame shielded from the wind, he still had a trace of clarity. He bit his tongue, allowing the sharp pain to rouse him. The incoming flame chopped down, like a solid hatchet blade. With all his might, AI Hui threw himself to the side. Boom! Amid the flame-filled sky, the long legs impacted heavily onto the ground, like a heavy tomahawk thrown by a giant. The solid, elevated stage shattered like a crispy biscuit. Fragments flew everywhere, revealing a battered and exhausted AI Hui. Zhu Yan was quite surprised. His kick appeared sharp, but the real killer technique was the interference produced by the Hellfire Spider Web. This move had been trialed and validated. Opponents usually became distracted by his legs, and their state of mind would be affected by the nearly invisible ripples. During a deadlocked battle between two excellent combatants, moment of absent-mindedness was enough to tip the scales of victory. The interference of the Hellfire Spider Web, surprisingly had zero effect on his opponent. Xuanhuan's interest was piqued. Those capable of dodging this skill were not nameless people. Who are you exactly? As if he had been injected with steroids, Xuanhuan roared as he launched a storm-like attack. The collision between his heavy legs and the ground was so loud it made people shiver. A scarlet-red blaze enveloped the whole stage, and the debris flew in all directions like a downpour. The pieces of the stage smashed against the elemental energy-powered screen, which isolated the stage from the outside, like raindrops pattering on a huge piece of banana leaf. Stunned, the whole training hall fell into silence as everyone was rendered speechless by the scene happening in front of them. How could they have ever witnessed such a violent attack? The more faint-hearted spectators trembled uncontrollably, and those who boasted of being brave turned pale-faced. Even the referees on the side looked tense. They were already prepared to rescue someone at any time. AI Huey's hairs stood on end. From the beginning and until now, danger had never left him. The intense crisis provoked his reflexes and he had no time to think at all. Dodge. Dodge with all his might. Relying on his instincts to dodge. He felt he could suffer a direct hit at any time. No, as long as his opponent's leg brushed against him, layers of skin would scrape off even if he did not perish. Are you a mouse? Dodge. You only know how to dodge. After launching consecutive missed attacks, Xuanhuan gradually became angrier and his voice revealed it. Do you think you can dodge? Xuanhuan sped up his attacks. Before the previous fire had even dispersed, a new flurry of flames were violently released with the heavy kicks coming his way. In the blink of an eye, the flames on stage stacked layer upon layer like scorching, red clouds. AI Hui was in an even more challenging situation. It was as if he had been surrounded by the raging sea and could be engulfed by the giant waves at any time. His energy was rapidly draining and at a faster rate than usual. Sweat was pouring out of his body, he was panting for breath, and his throat was hot like a blazing fire. The audience offstage gradually recovered from their initial shock and soon discovered something abnormal. That strange, pitiful earth elementalist always appeared to be in jeopardy, narrowly avoiding collapse and destruction. But, a long time later, that fellow had actually not been hit yet. How odd. Those with even the tiniest brain could tell something was not right. Dodging a move or two was possibly due to luck. More than 10 strikes. Absolutely not a fluke. Slowly, someone started to notice a possible explanation. That earth elementalist could anticipate Xuanhuan's attacks, and his actions were extremely nimble, lacking any slight delay and sloppiness. His moves were so fluid, it was as if his whole body had been coated with oil. With such smooth dodging, this was definitely not an obscure figure. Everyone was racking their brains to recall which earth elementalist was known to be an expert in this battling style. Wait, earth elementalist, that everyone felt a sense of unexplainable awkwardness. If it had been another individual, they would receive it well, but remembering that the person on stage was an earth elementalist, the crowd felt uncomfortable. Such smooth battle moves carried out by an earth elementalist. What a violation of laws. Shouldn't an earth elementalist's moves be dictated by his sand puppet? Only at this point did everyone remember. Where was that slightly foolish sand puppet? Chapter 32. Secret Signal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Irene. Editor. Pranav. Everyone had forgotten Lulan. Xuanhuan had initially paid no attention to Lulan. Additionally, he had been provoked by AI Hui, and while fighting, he had naturally neglected a useless sand puppet. AI Hui was in a highly strained state and was completely relying on his instincts and wealth of experience to dodge. He, too, had no time to spare for Lulan. The members of the audience were enthralled by Xuanhuan's dazzling and sharp moves and were staring, full of shock, at the stage. How could they possibly remember that clumsy sand puppet? All this while, Lu Lan was standing in a corner, watching AI Hui dart around the stage. He pondered expressionlessly over the possible ways he could assist AI Hui. He had completely recovered from his initial nervousness, but alas, it was now of no use. He was truly a rookie when it came to battling, he was completely unable to enter their combat. AI Hui, whom he regarded as akin to a war god, was forced to flee around the stage without the least bit of energy to retaliate. The opponent's skills were too powerful. With such an absolute disparity between the strengths of both parties, Lu Lan could not come up with a practical idea to turn the situation around. If AI Hui had stopped and asked, "Lu Lan, have you thought of something?" he would definitely respond, "We'd better surrender." He would then tell AI Hui that judging from the current situational development, they were bound to be defeated at some point. AI Hui's right arm was broken, and its treatment would cost quite a bit. If the fight continued, he would sustain more injuries, which in turn meant spending more money. He would then, as a loyal friend, remind AI Hui that he was destitute. This was the most logical thing to do. Yet apparently, over here, all logic was thrown out of the window. Lu Lan vividly remembered AI Hui's eyes. They were not bright but instead ice-cold and profound, while slightly flickering with an intense battle intent. Was that deeply hidden passion going to erupt at this moment? Lu Lan was a little envious. He did not understand why AI Hui was so determined and reckless. Why did he choose to fight on, knowing that he was far weaker than his rival? Why didn't he surrender even after being chased around until he could not even hit back? Was that passion? Lu Lan seriously assessed himself but found no such passion within himself. He mocked himself. He really was thinking too much. Lu Lan, you're a sand puppet, he reminded himself. Nevertheless, to have a friend like AI Hui was truly something to be happy about. Moreover, he was battling alongside AI Hui. Suddenly remembering the battle, he scanned across the aggressive scene that was taking place not far away and muttered uncertainly to himself, somewhat alongside ENV. He had been a little troubled, but his unhappiness immediately vanished, like smoke into thin air. Although I do not have that kind of passion that you do, you are a friend. Lu Lan's one and only friend. That, in itself, was a sufficient reason to battle, Lu Lan said to himself. Lu Lan was a sand puppet. Lu Lan's body suddenly shattered and transformed into a pool of sand. The stage was filled with a surging airflow, and Lu Lan borrowed its energy to noiselessly hover in the air. Occasionally, fire fragments would pass through his body, but he displayed no reaction. He was like an unremarkable cloud, floating silently amongst the raging storm of violent flames. Lu Lan not only had a degree of understanding of flaming heavenly spider transformation, but he had also read descriptions of hellfire spider web. Flaming heavenly spider transformation had been classified as an absolute art mainly because of its enormous potential for growth. Once comprehended, the absolute art strength would jump to a higher level with each palace opened. With a base level of only 2 palaces, executing hellfire spider web was remarkably difficult, and at the very least, would be required for complete implementation. Hellfire spider web, when executed with only 2 palaces, had an enormous loophole. It could affect only those enemies that were on the ground. If enemies approached from above, they would not trigger the response of hellfire spider web. It was a pity that AI Hui could not fly. However, as a matter of fact, all weakness were only significant when 2 opponents were of similar strength. In the current situation, with such a large gap in skill level, identifying a weakness was somewhat useless. Lu Lan floated in midair, as he calmly drifted along with the airflow. Lu Lan could feel that the opponent was consuming huge amounts of elemental energy and physical strength, and this was evident from his increasingly slow attacks and his large, heaving breaths. However, AI Hui was comparatively more miserable, his whole body was thoroughly exhausted. Lu Lan could even sense that AI Hui's legs were trembling. He could not help but admire AI Hui. Willpower was an unfamiliar word to a sand puppet. He had only read it in books previously, but today, he had finally witnessed AI Huey's marvelous determination for himself. He could now sincerely feel what willpower was. AI Hui was too awesome. At that moment, AI Hui lunged to the side, narrowly avoiding a massive leg that descended from the sky. Boom! It forcefully smashed on the ground. Yet another near miss. Seeing that the opponent was close by, Lu Lan decisively made his move. Zhu Yan had not expected Lu Lan's attack since all his focus was on AI Hui. Furthermore, the attack came from midair, which was not under the jurisdiction of his Hellfire Spider Web. Whoosh! A clump of sand suddenly materialized and wrapped Zhu Yan up at lightning speed. A layer of fine sand started to make its way onto Zhu Yan's palms. Eventually, a thin layer of sand had appeared in between Zhu Yan's palms and the ground. Caught completely off guard, Zhu Yan's expression changed. With the layer of sand separating his palms from the floor, his connection with the Hellfire Spider Web was affected. His sense of his surroundings immediately turned blurry. Rustle. 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 Countless grains of fine sand started grinding against one another. The sound of grinding sand was like a bolt of lightning that pierced through the clouds and struck AI Hui, instantly illuminating his almost unconscious brain. Let's set a secret warning signal. The sound of grinding sand. Not too loud, just enough for me to be able to hear. His slackened pupils suddenly contracted as AI Huey's demeanor abruptly changed. He adjusted his posture and his right foot stomped vigorously on the ground. Creak. An ear-piercing sound, caused by the friction between his shoes and the ground, was generated, which was followed by a cloud of green smoke. AI Huey's body was in a steeply inclined position, almost parallel to the ground. He maintained his balance by placing his hands on the ground to support his body. AI Hui, who had just stopped himself, unhesitatingly garnered his last bit of strength and elemental energy. He then engaged all limbs before shooting out, like a spring, towards the miserable figure that was bundled up by the yellow sand. AI Hui arched his body slightly in midair. The moment his back touched something, his body reacted instinctively. Arching fish back. Boom. Unlike the explosive sounds that were being caused by Zhu Yan's massive legs, this sonic boom was exceptionally dull and muffled, as if it had come from deep underground. However, it carried with it an even more frightening amount of power. The yellow sand was like a hurricane, it was flying everywhere. As if a wild rhinoceros had slammed into his body, Zhu Yan, with a resounding boom, was sent airborne before smashing against the isolation screen. A moment later, his limp body, which was spread out like a flatbread, started to slowly slide down. The referees at the side rushed towards him, and after a brief inspection, they sighed a collective breath of relief. No worries. He's just unconscious. There was only dead silence throughout the training hall, everyone present was left utterly speechless by the turn of events. The arching fish back, from earlier had drained every single drop of energy from AI Huey's body, he could not even lift a finger right now. Rustle. 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 Countless granules of yellow sand rolled about on the ground, resembling many creeks converging. Soon, a large lump of sand, Lu Lan, appeared in front of AI Hui. The sand moved under AI Huey's body and propped him up, before gently sliding him off stage like moving quicksand. Everyone dazedly looked on in silence. They had yet to recover from the earlier shock. The golden sand did not pull AI Hui out through the exit, but instead, slid towards the manager of the training hall. Pooh! The mass of quicksand spat out the soul-fogging grass, which landed on the manager's table. Then, a part of the flowing sand transformed into a palm and extended out in front of the manager. The manager was still standing in shock. After waiting for 10 seconds, the golden sand hand impatiently slapped down on the manager's table a few times, before moving back in front of the manager. It continuously gestured, with a thumb and index finger made of sand, as a hint. The manager instantly understood and hurriedly brought the prize money over, fluidly placing it on top of the palm of yellow sand. It was only then that the golden sand pulled Ai Hui through the deadly silent hall, before exiting under the astonished gazes of the dumbstruck crowd. Chapter 33. Repercussions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. JL Editor. Pranav Xuanhuan allowed herself to stop and catch her breath. However, she did this only after she managed to destroy 20.7 wooden stakes and shatter 30.7 iron targets consecutively. Wiping off the beads of perspiration that trickled down her forehead, Xuanhuan realized that after venting her anger, her pent-up frustrations were finally relieved. She had initially been so confident about fighting a blind battle, but reality had given her a cruel slap in the face. Xuanhuan felt that ever since she had encountered that scoundrel, her luck had started going downhill. Everything had become increasingly unfavorable for her. When she noticed Uncle Yongzheng shuffling hurriedly in her direction, she halted her training, and a trace of hope inadvertently rose within her. "Have you found any news of that scoundrel?" "Miss, we just received news that young Master Zhu Yan was beaten unconscious at a training hall." Xuanhuan paused for a moment, before responding, "Ah, Zhu Yan. He was knocked unconscious. What's the situation now?" She had known Zhu Yan when she was a young girl. Both of their families were on good terms, and they were close family friends. Zhu Yan was younger than her by 2 years, and she had always seen him as a little brat. When they were both children, he had always followed her around like a shadow. However, when he grew older, his talent had also emerged. Nobody had expected that Zhu Yan would be the first in his family's younger generation to successfully comprehend flaming heavenly fire transformation. Since then, Xuanhuan had hardly seen him, and she had reckoned that he was locked up at home training. As the sole seedling of the new generation, the Zhu family placed him with the utmost importance. In this aspect, though, Xuanhuan was no exception, but in spite of that, she was more diligent and had higher expectations for herself. She did not need to live under the constant supervision of others, and as such, her family did not impose many restrictions on her. Yongzheng replied, "The Zhu family's servants took him home." "That is good to hear," Xuanhuan softly sighed with relief. Shortly after, her expression became grave, as she asked, "What is the background of the opposite party?" "We are not sure yet. There have been many skilled practitioners from the outer states recently participating in blind battles at Central Pine City." Yongzheng paused before continuing, "Currently, we only know that the other party is an earth elementalist. He also has a brilliant sand puppet that aided him in defeating young Master Zhu Yan in the blind battle." "Blind battle?" Xuanhuan asked, surprised. Her first thought was of that scoundrel from the previous battle. However, upon thinking some more, she realized that if the opposite party had a sand puppet, then it could not be the scoundrel. Xuanhuan clearly remembered every detail about that scoundrel, and while she was unable to determine his identity, she was entirely certain that he was not an earth elementalist. Furthermore, it was highly unlikely that that scoundrel could defeat Zhu Yan in a blind battle. The Shi family and Zhu family were family friends, and thus, Xuanhuan knew much more about the Zhu family's legacy skills than the ordinary person. She had long heard that Zhu Yan had managed to activate 2 palaces according to flaming heavenly spider transformation, and as long as 2 palaces of the flaming heavenly spider transformation were activated, he would be able to learn Hellfire Spider Web. Hellfire Spider Web was similar to a spider web, in the sense that it would spread around an area to detect any movements within its surroundings. It could be said to be a weapon that was designed for blind battles. In fact, it seemed as if blind battles were tailored specifically for Zhu Yan. Xuanhuan knew that in a standard duel, she had an 80% chance of defeating Zhu Yan. However, in a blind battle, Xuanhuan clearly understood that she would not even stand a chance in defeating him. Yet Zhu Yan was actually beaten in a blind battle. Furthermore, he was knocked unconscious. One could imagine the astonishment that Xuanhuan was feeling. She tried to recall the identities of skilled earth elementalists of the induction ground that could defeat Zhu Yan. While there were many earth elementalist members who were definitely stronger than Zhu Yan, it was difficult for her to pinpoint who exactly could defeat Zhu Yan in a blind battle. After gradually recovering from her shock, she sighed again. Perhaps it's a good thing, lest he becomes arrogant. Yongjing glanced at Xuanhuan and laughed bitterly to himself. He, too, was shocked when he first heard the news. Central Pine City could be described as turbulent in recent times, but as a resident of Central Pine City for many years, he was used to the previous peace and quiet. In the induction ground, Central Pine City was a small city that never had many experts. However, the sudden boom in popularity of blind battles had brought about a drastic change in the environment of Central Pine City. The news of Zhu Yan's defeat and the mysterious earth elementalist was sure to spread like wildfire. Unfortunately, it would only attract the attention of more skilled experts. If news that the famous Xuanhuan was hiding in his very own training ground was disclosed, then Central Pine City would get even more crowded. He sighed. He should not keep worrying blindly about such things. He could only laugh bitterly when he recalled that the blind battle was initially his idea. Ask around for more information on this earth elementalist, Xuanhuan instructed. Yongjing nodded affirmatively and replied, yes. As predicted, the news of Zhu Yan being defeated by a mysterious earth elementalist quickly spread around the entire Central Pine City at an alarming rate. Zhu Yan was simply too famous. Although Zhu Yan had managed to activate 2 palaces, it was not considered to be an achievement in the induction ground. However, the fact that he practiced the absolute art, flaming heavenly spider transformation, was sufficient enough for him to rise to fame. Throughout the Zhu family's long history, the disciples of each generation who had managed to comprehend the flaming heavenly spider transformation, were all over the age of 30. Zhu Yan, who was able to comprehend an absolute art at such a young age, had already revealed his astonishing talent. This had greatly enforced the belief that he would have an exceptionally bright future. Due to his age, however, his power was now limited. Moreover, absolute arts were absolute arts, after all. So what if Zhu Yan had activated only 2 palaces? Zhu Yan's capability was definitely not any less than those who had managed to activate 4 palaces. Zhu Yan had entered the induction ground while bearing the burden of being the top of the Zhu's family younger generation. While he was not a common household topic, Zhu Yan's fame definitely surpassed every student of Central Pine City. Even the reputation of the top genius of Central Pine City, Xuanhuan, was incomparable to that of Zhu Yan. One could only imagine the sensation that Zhu Yan's defeat had brought to Central Pine City. The whole city was discussing the identity of the mysterious earth elementalist. The effect of this incident was not just limited to Central Pine City. After hearing about it, many outstanding experts of other cities had also become exceptionally interested. They sought to take part in the famed blind battles of Central Pine City. However, no one knew about the miserable state of Ai Hui and Lu Lan, the chief protagonists of this incident. Swoosh! Lu Lan slid down from the fence. Ai Hui, how do you feel? Remaining in the form of a puddle of quicksand, Lu Lan smoothly glided to the side of a mummified figure. The figure, which was Ai Hui, looked far worse compared to Lu Lan. It was wrapped in countless of loops of white bandages and the right arm was pitifully hanging in front of its chest. In the main training hall, Ai Hui was miserably resting on the rattan chair, chewing on a blade of grass. He mumbled, Lu Lan, are you all right? Master Xiao said that I will only be able to stand after 3 days. Before that, I'm unable to heal you, Ai Hui, Lu Lan reported with regret. Before continuing, do you want me to find Dr. Mu Xiu to heal you first? Nope. I'm not in a hurry anyway. I will wait for you to recover and then heal me. I'm a poor man, you see. Okay. Lu Lan did not protest and, like a snake, started to wind around a pillar that was next to AI Hui. He stopped his ascent when he reached AI Hui's eye level. AI Hui suddenly spoke. "Thank you for yesterday, Lu Lan." "Why are you thanking me, AI Hui? Wasn't it supposed to be like this?" Lu Lan asked in confusion. "I'm referring to not forgetting to take our reward when we left." AI Hui gazed up at the heavens while euphorically exclaiming, "So much cash. We are rich. We are rich." The cash reward was extremely generous. It amounted to 500,000 yuan, which was a tremendous amount in AI Hui's eyes. "We won," Lu Lan burst out with joy. He was particularly happy that he had managed to win his first actual battle. Nothing could make him more satisfied than the fact that he had played a major role in the fight. Suddenly, AI Hui, his voice laced with concern, asked, "Oh yes, what did Master Xiao say about your special abilities?" Chapter 34. To split the cash. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. JL Editor. After they returned from the battle, Lu Lan explained the various odd quirks on his body to an astonished AI Hui. AI Hui was very familiar with the soul-fogging grass. While the effect of the soul-fogging grass in restraining a sand puppet was not definite, if a sand puppet was of low quality, the restraining effect would be very distinct. Although it was highly unexpected for Lu Lan to still be able to see when a whole blade of soul-fogging grass was placed on his head, yesterday proved otherwise. From the beginning, AI Hui felt that Master Xiao was mysterious and brilliant. Many of Lu Lan's aspects continued to surprise him. AI Hui had interacted with numerous sand puppets before, but Lu Lan was the most unique sand puppet that he had ever seen. Master Xiao said he used a lot of his own inventions on me and never imagined that there would be such an effect. He did not know what I would be transformed into since most of the techniques he used were untested. As of now, I am a never-before-seen being. To put it simply, I am an experiment, but Master Xiao never imagined that I would be effective in combat and was amazed by my performance. Regarding my current situation, Master Xiao still needs time to contemplate. As he neared the end of his speech, Lu Lan looked happy. He felt relatively joyful due to the fact that Master Xiao was astonished by his accomplishments. "You can definitely be a fighter," AI Hui said in an assured tone. He continued, "I feel that you have the potential to be a high-level battle sand puppet." "Really, really?" Lu Lan's tone was jubilant, like a kid who had just received a compliment. "Of course." AI Hui thought of something suddenly and said, "Oh yes. We have one more deed to do." "What do we need to do?" Lu Lan asked curiously. From lying on the rattan chair like he was at his last breath, AI Hui suddenly jolted up as if he had ingested some miracle tonic. His pride was practically bursting out of his body and could not be constrained by the numerous bandages wrapped on him. AI Hui cheered, "Split the cash." "Split the cash." Lu Lan was somewhat confused. "Of course we need to split it. Half of the cash reward belongs to you," AI Hui said in a matter-of-fact tone. Lu Lan paused for a moment before saying, "We do not need to split the cash reward. I am just a sand puppet." "Who set the rules that sand puppets do not need to get a share of the cash reward?" AI Hui asked calmly. "No matter whether you are a sand puppet or not, we fought together, and this means we are partners. Since half the merit is yours, half the cash reward is definitely yours too. This is the rule." Lu Lan said limply, "But." "There is no but." AI Hui insisted. "It is decided and it shall be this way in the future. The 100,000 yuan from the first battle will be solely mine as I fought in the battle alone. The cash reward from the second battle is 500,000 yuan and we shall split it evenly between us. Take it away quickly before I get blinded by the amount of money we have. Adding up the cash from both battles, I will have 350,000 yuan. AI Hui spoke in an agitated tone. 350,000 yuan. To AI Hui, this is a hefty amount that he had never before earned in his entire life. I made it. I made it. His mind was filled with that phrase. As he visualized the countless energy-replenishing tonic soups that he could now afford and their tantalizing smell, he unknowingly gulped. Oh heavens, have mercy on AI Hui. A country bumpkin like him had never seen such a large amount of money before. With a trace of sleepiness in his voice, AI Hui asked, "How are you going to spend the money, Lu Lan?" Lu Lan was somewhat at a loss and said, "I don't know." What, you don't even know what to spend on? Lu Lan, you are too silly, haha. AI Hui's voice was weary, and his speech was unclear. But Lu Lan truly did not know. He never thought that he would be given a share of the cash reward. Since the day he was first created, Lu Lan had countless interactions with money, such as when Master Xiao sent him to buy ingredients, when he went shopping for daily groceries, and so on. However, the sand puppet had never had money that belonged solely to himself. Nobody rewarded him with cash even if he helped them. He was merely a sand puppet. Wasn't it natural and proper for a sand puppet to help human beings? As a result, this was the first in his life that he received a sum of money that was his alone. This sudden monetary gain affected him tremendously. Reflexively, he looked towards AI Hui, who had incidentally fallen asleep. Even while sleeping, AI Hui pursed his lips, as if he was eating something. Lu Lan gazed at AI Hui silently while reflecting on what AI Hui had said previously. No matter whether you are a sand puppet or not, we fought together, and this means we are partners. Since half the merit is yours, half the cash reward is definitely yours too. This is the rule. Partners. A feeling he never experienced before surged into him. Lu Lan did not know how to describe this feeling, but he felt that this would be a day he would remember for the rest of his life. On this day, Lu Lan finally had his own money. On this day, Lu Lan was treated as a partner and not just as a tool. He realized that he had been unaware that he was lacking something, but now he was fulfilled. It was as if he had encountered a light at the end of a dark tunnel. At that moment, he understood that he was no longer the same Lu Lan as before. He was unable to describe the change, but he knew that he was different now. Xuanhuan, you are still not attending lessons today. His friends who were getting ready to leave shouted through his locked door. In his room, Xuanhuan moved his face close to the mirror. Looking at his swollen face which still revealed the distinctive palm imprints, his eye twitched and he forced the words out of his mouth, "I am not going." "Then we're leaving." While continuing their discussion, his friends turned and departed. What is going on with Xuanhuan recently? He does not even attend his lessons anymore. He never skipped any of his classes before. Perhaps he is sick. Didn't he catch a cold previously? Oh yeah, it seems like he was also tortured by the instructor from the Society of Excellence. Thank goodness we didn't join. Oh please, we wanted to be in the Society of Excellence, but we were not accepted. Do you think just anyone can be like Xuanhuan? His popularity among ladies coupled with his handsome looks and capability made him number one in Central Pine City. Xuanhuan turned green. Currently, he only wanted to cover his ears, but the comments of his friends outside found their way to his ears. Looking at the swollen face reflected in the mirror, every sentence was like a stab to his heart. That damn cold. He was actually knocked unconscious by that fellow. He felt his emotions rising. Thinking back to the humiliating measures that the scoundrel AI Hui used, Xuanhuan once again felt his face heating up. Recalling the gesticulations from the many females on the street, his face was practically burning. He was not sure if it was an illusion, but he felt that the face in the mirror was more swollen than before, as if it had transformed into a bun. The elegant, dainty chin was gone and his facial features were completely warped. His once charismatic eyes has also become lightbulb-like. This is too humiliating. This is simply too embarrassing. This hatred cannot be contained. Just you wait, AI Hui. Xuanhuan, will definitely not let you off. Suddenly, someone shouted from outside the window, rumor has it that Xuanhuan is the #1 expert in Central Pine City. I am Gu Tianing and I am challenging you to a duel. Xuanhuan, do you dare to accept my challenge? Xuanhuan tensed. Fellow student Xuanhuan, don't tell me that you do not have even an ounce of courage to battle. What a disappointment, the newcomer shouted, his voice echoing into the distance. Xuanhuan trembled in anger, but looking back at the swollen face in the mirror, the urge to rush out disappeared. If he rushed out, he would surely become the laughingstock of Central Pine City tomorrow. Just you wait, AI Hui. Chapter 35. Harvest and Explode. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Irene Editor. As AI Hui waved his arm, he felt that he was strong enough to kill a bull. Lu Lan's skills were indeed trustworthy. Lu Lan, I'm going to train. AI Hui carried the dried food and water he had prepared during the morning and waved to Lu Lan. With a clap, Lu Lan exploded into a lump of yellow sand and molded into a tight, yellow sand fist. You go, AI Hui. AI Hui laughed and hoisted the bag over his shoulder tightly before exiting the Vanguard training hall. Walking on the streets, AI Hui clearly felt that there was a much bigger crowd than usual. Soon he understood that these people were mostly students from other cities who came over to participate in the blind battles. As he listened, their heated discussions involved experts they had met, mysterious earth elementalists, Zhu Yan, and so on. AI Hui was baffled by the news. He had long forgotten about his disguise as an earth elementalist, so he did not put two and two together. Very quickly, however, he heard something that he could comprehend. Have you heard? Gu Tianing challenged Xuanhuan to a battle, but Xuanhuan caught a cold and was unable to show up. What a pity. Ah, that's really a pity. I have seen Gu Tianing's skills. He's powerful. He ranked within the top 50 of the induction ground at 40.9th. Plus, he's a berserker in battle. Xuanhuan is the #1 talent in Central Pine City. He's the most outstanding kid in his family, so it definitely would have been an intense battle. That's why it's unfortunate. Initially, Gu Tianing thought Xuanhuan was finding an excuse. He only found out later that Xuanhuan was really out with a cold and couldn't attend classes for a few days. Too bad. AI Hui sneered while listening at the side. He despised Xuanhuan greatly. What cold? Who was this guy fooling? If he had not personally cured Xuanhuan, AI Hui would have been deceived by this absurd excuse. Xuanhuan appeared to be decent, but it seemed like his morals were questionable. AI Hui, who was inwardly disdaining Xuanhuan, soon forgot about this news after traveling less than 10 meters. AI Hui never cared about things that were irrelevant to him. Although Xuanhuan was a classmate, he was no different from any passerby in AI Hui's eyes. AI Hui was very cautious toward the world. He was insulated, apathetic, and did not care if this planet perished or prospered. He was only concerned about his own small world. The word friends had a completely different meaning to AI Hui. Fatty was unscrupulous, stingy, greedy, and timid, but he was actually also a soft-hearted and kind person who tried to be on good terms with everyone. In the wilderness, he was the one who buried the workers who had passed away. Only Fatty would do something like this. AI Hui would not, since he found it meaningless. He only cared about Fatty, who was his friend during times of tribulation. Fatty had saved AI Hui's life more than once. The worst incident occurred when the team was attacked by a bunch of dire beasts. Half of the elementalists died. The laborers, needless to say, were practically all killed or injured. AI Hui was seriously injured and had lost consciousness. Trembling, Fatty pulled him out from the pile of dead bodies. While the elementalists panicked and just wanted to be on their way, no one bothered to care for the laborers. Fatty carried him, ran with the remaining team for 5 days, and lost 10 kilograms doing this. That was the only time he had been skinny. When Ai Hui regained consciousness for the first time, Fatty hugged him while wailing loudly, creating a scene Ai Hui could never forget. Now there was Lu Lan. Probably because Lu Lan was a sand puppet, Ai Hui did not guard against him that much. He felt this situation was quite good. It would allow him to direct all his energy into his training. His world was small, but it was all he needed. Upon exiting Central Pine City, Ai Hui quickened his steps. No one noticed this youth with the shabby cloth bag. Although he had just earned a hefty sum of 350,000 yuan, he could not bear to spend it. His shabby cloth bag was still a shabby cloth bag. His dried rations were still hard and dehydrated pancakes. In the future, he would have many necessities that required money. These blind battles made Ai Hui realize that he was very naive for hoping to earn money through competitions. Even though he had joined forces with Lu Lan, his last victory had been a fluke within a fluke. Such luck would never befall him again. The blind battles within Central Pine City were now widely acclaimed and the number of experts competing started to increase. His chances of winning would only become slimmer. Previously, he could depend on his familiarity with night battles to have an advantage over other contestants, but in front of all kinds of strange fighting methods and the absolute elemental energy disparity, his advantage became negligible. No matter what, experience could never replace skills. Otherwise, he would not have to attend classes in the induction ground. When he neared the suspending golden pagoda, he met 2 city guards who reminded him about roaming wild beasts and warned him to pay attention to safety. Ai Hui was a little taken aback, but he expressed his thanks anyway. He had only been away for a few days, yet wild beasts started to appear. It looked like he had to be careful, so Ai Hui raised his alertness. Having survived the wilderness, he naturally would not be the least bit careless. Arriving at the pagoda, Ai Hui scanned his surroundings meticulously. It was more or less the same as when he had left this place a few days back. There were no marks left by the wild beasts, causing Ai Hui to feel a little puzzled. Although he was not sure how the beast sightings came to be reported, Ai Hui had extensive experience in this area and greater faith in his own judgment. Upon retrieving his well-hidden backless armor and seeing that it was safe without a scratch, Ai Hui was relieved. This armor was quite expensive, and it could be considered as an important asset. He put the armor on and fastened it before starting his unique training. When Ai Hui threw himself into the pagoda once again, he felt different from before. The metal wind still pierced into his bones, but the pain induced by the silver strands of metal element had lessened significantly. This caught Ai Hui's attention. After careful sensing and observation, he realized there was a slight change in his muscles. They were tougher, more durable, and denser. His muscles were initially like rice straw, while the strands of metal element were like steel needles that permeated into his body and caused shooting pains. Now, however, his muscles became more solid. The rice straw had become bamboo, naturally reducing the pain. The metal elemental energy contained within these silver strands was much more condensed than the energy from typical sources. This promoted the growth of muscle strength more effectively than the common metal elemental energy. This discovery incited Ai Hui. He knew he had found the right path. There was still a lack of affinity, but he had better endurance. Although his absorption was less efficient, he could absorb a higher grade of elemental energy. The higher the grade, the more effective the training was for the body. There was nothing more exciting than unearthing a path that belonged to him. For this session, Ai Hui persevered for an even longer time. His day became richer and more fulfilling. Ai Hui was very willing to endure the dull and dreary training. Be it the absorption of elemental energy or the arching fish back, Ai Hui was full of vigor before. Ai Hui only used the arching fish back to disperse the silver strands of metal element in his body, but the previous blind battle had made him realize the effectiveness of this move. It could be formidable if trained properly. Even an expert who practiced an absolute art and activated 2 palaces was knocked senseless by his arching fish back. Currently, it was definitely his most powerful technique. Ai Hui had brought a whole month's worth of dried food. He also found a water source about 2 kilometers away. In that desolate suspending golden pagoda, he started diligently training day and night without pause. It was not hard work to him. No one knew how much he had wished to be able to focus on training without having to worry about anything else during his time in the wilderness. It felt so good. Being able to feel his dripping sweat was something that felt really good. He could sense his progress every day. They were tiny, but firm and steady improvements that gave him a feeling of accomplishment. Yes, his world was this small. He had never thought of saving the planet or becoming a hero. Training hard daily, without worrying about being attacked by wild beasts or about tomorrow's plans, was enough. How could such a life not be blissful? He could not think of a happier life. He wished for this lifestyle to continue forever. To Ai Hui, who was immersed in his training, 1 month ended in the blink of an eye. He only became aware of the fact that a month had passed when he reached into his cloth bag and felt that it was empty. During that 1 month, Ai Hui did not waste a single second. As he removed his backless armor, his face was full of surprise. His progress was so great that even he himself could not believe it. Under the sunlight, a faint metallic sheen appeared on his skin. He had witnessed such a phenomenon before, but only from some of the authentic, master elementalists. His skin became even harder. He tried using a sharp piece of stone to scratch his skin but only created a shallow mark. His strength had obviously increased. His muscles, which had been refined by metal elemental energy, could produce greater explosive force. His power was not weak to begin with, but it had now become alarmingly strong. Even without utilizing elemental energy, his base strength was 5 times more powerful. The elemental energy within his body had grown even more obviously. In the past, his elemental energy was thin like a thread, but now it was as thick as a toothpick. The growth in his elemental energy would bring about a comprehensive growth to his fighting capabilities. The force of his arching fish back was also boosted compared to before. It was evident from the big dent on the pagoda's wall. Before, the subtle indentation could only be seen with the naked eye when viewed up close. Now, it was extremely obvious and could easily be noticed. Judging from this pace, another 2 months was all Ai Hui needed before attempting to activate his natal residences. Ai Hui was not in a rush to activate the residences because he could feel his continuous progress, indicating his tempering had not reached bottleneck. His experience in the wilderness taught him that a robust body was essential at all times. He witnessed some master elementalists perish, even though they possessed exceptional elemental energy, due to weak physiques. His body could take it, so why shouldn't he take this chance to fortify it even further? Ai Hui managed to control his eager heart since he knew he was on the right path. He had seen a lot of swordplay manuals from the big sects and none failed to highlight the importance of the basics. These books should contain logic and truth if they had been passed down over tens of thousands of years. Ai Hui started salivating after suddenly recalling Lu Lan's elemental energy replenishing soup. Like a gust of wind he rushed toward Central Pine City. He was unaware that in the month he was gone, the world outside had been turned upside down. Defeated, Zhu Yan closed himself off from the world to train. Seeking a rematch in half a year, he proclaimed a written challenge addressed to that mysterious earth elementalist. Challenge notices were placed outside every institution within the induction ground. Xuanhuan trained diligently as well. She felt that her skills were insufficient to defeat her enemy and was preparing for more arduous closed-door training to sharpen her combat ability. Central Pine City had become the most popular city within the induction ground. The blind battling trend swept across the induction ground since it was a novel system of competition that attracted much interest. Teachers discussed blind battling techniques in classes, and some more progressive schools even started to prepare lessons dedicated to blind battles. During this month, within Central Pine City, the limelight belonged solely to one person, Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan was renowned as the #1 genius among Central Pine City's current batch of students, and people thought highly of him. He was also one of the more popular students in the city. The rise in popularity of blind battling brought along many expert fighters from outside of Central Pine. When many talented combatants gathered, there were naturally people who wanted to challenge Xuanhuan, especially after he rejected Gu Tianing's duel request. Sure, he had a cold, but many still scorned and looked down on him. Rumors spread that he was strong in appearance, but weak in reality, leading many fame-seeking students to challenge him one after another. Xuanhuan consequently exploded. He consecutively defeated 9 seniors, who were all at least 4 years older than him, within a week, and spontaneously silenced the gossip. But this was just the beginning. With a belly full of anger, Xuanhuan wasn't satisfied just yet. During the next week, he headed down to different training halls to declare challenges to their respective experts. 15 consecutive wins in a week. One of his defeated opponents even had 6 palaces activated. Such a terrifying combat record immediately boosted his reputation within the induction ground. The bloodthirsty Xuanhuan had no intention to stop, however. In the 3rd week, he fought his way out of Central Pine City and into the rankings of the induction ground. He challenged and defeated the 40.9th ranked Gu Tianing, the 30.3rd ranked Xuanhuan, and the 20.5th ranked Fu Hua. The entire induction ground was momentarily silenced. He jumped up to 17th in the newly announced rankings, becoming the only new student to place within the top 20. He also became the leading student of this year's new students. Historically speaking, the number of new students who managed to accomplish this could be counted on one hand. With his outstanding accomplishments, Xuanhuan became one of the finest contenders in the induction ground. His astonishing talent and aptitude shocked the induction ground's management team. They allowed him to move up to a higher level school district in order to receive better guidance. Upon hearing the news, countless school districts were quick to react. Since Xuanmu had yet to return to Central Pine City, they took the opportunity to catch him midway and attempted to pull this rare talent into their institutions by offering generous conditions. What caused everyone to be taken aback was the fact that Xuanhuan rejected all of them. He publicly declared that he was going to remain in Central Pine and would only accept Teacher Su's guidance. This unexpected choice silenced the induction ground once again, but since everyone valued him highly now, they decided he was virtuous and respectful of those who had helped him along the way. Xuanhuan's glorious image received another boost. With his handsome looks, devilish charm, and naturally cool disposition, he became the man of many young girls' dreams. Many of them left their respective institutions in order to follow him as he went around challenging different experts. No matter where he went, countless beauties trailed behind him. The once unknown Central Pine City was now beyond famous and had become a city envied by institutions from all other cities. And today was the day Xuanhuan was returning to Central Pine City. Chapter 36. Nightmare. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Cynthia. Editor. Pranav, I didn't know that Xuanmu is so strong. Yeah, and he is so idealistic to choose to stay in Central Pine City. He is definitely a loyal person. I can't believe that I used to have prejudice against him before. That's right. Xuanmu may seem cold from appearance but is actually emotional at heart. Today was the day of the return of Xuanhuan to Central Pine City. When the faculty and students learned of the news, the entire school came together to distinctly hold a welcome ceremony for Xuanmu. Whether teacher or student, everyone's face was radiant with joy. A freshman had made it to the top 20 of the induction ground. It was an unprecedented honor, even in the entire history of Central Pine City. It not only brought fame but also tangible benefits to the city. As long as they could retain Xuanhuan, Central Pine Academy could get a high score every year, because the score earned by Xuanhuan alone was more than all the other students combined. The score was tightly related to the rating and resources that would be allocated to the school in the future. As a result, Xuanmu had definitely become the apple of everyone's eyes. Xuanhuan's incredible achievement was totally out of the school officials' expectations. Moreover, when Xuanmu announced to the public that he would continue to study in Central Pine Academy, they felt as if a delicious pie had fallen from the sky onto their laps. Not only was it the reason why a welcome ceremony was being held, but it was also why all the participants, whether teachers or students, were more than happy to do so from the bottom of their hearts. The benefit that Xuanmu had brought them covered many aspects, including a rise in teachers' salaries and the improvement of students' training resources. However, this was all the more impressive to the female students of Central Pine Academy. Xuanhuan had previously enjoyed an amazingly high popularity among these girls, but now, after becoming the idol of the entire induction ground, they had all started to go crazy over him. Girls, cheer up. We don't lose to the B** cheese from other schools. Exactly. Xuanhuan belongs to us. Who are they to meddle with us? Anyone who wants our Xuanhuan has to defeat me first. Good things should always be kept for our own. Throw those B** cheese away as far as possible. Xuanhuan will know who really loves him the most. These girls had dressed up extravagantly in their favorite dresses to attend the welcome ceremony. Faculty and students were gathered on both sides of the road, preparing to welcome their beloved Xuanmu. The crowd stretched from the gate of the city all the way to the entrance of Central Pine Academy. The shops along the road were decorated with flags, and each training hall had also adorned their entrances with colorful banners. The managers and merchants were all beaming with joy as flocks of people continued to bring much more profits to their businesses. The sudden increase in popularity of blind battles had greatly improved the business of the various training halls in Central Pine City, now informally known as the Cradle of Blind Battles. Their businesses could already flourish along with the trend for quite some while more. Yet, they were also clearly aware that that would hardly last long, because, although blind battles were a new and hot topic at this moment, as time passed by, interest would eventually be lost, resulting in the inevitable plummet in profit. The rise of Xuanhuan, however, was a pleasant surprise to them. As long as the glorious Xuanhuan continued to stay in Central Pine City, the small city would no longer be as obscure as before. What did Top 20 in the induction ground stand for? It stood for something that everybody looked up to, and in other words, the signature symbol of Central Pine City had now been changed. Previously, it was blind battles, but from now on, it would be the great genius Xuanhuan. In the keen eyes of the businessmen of Central Pine City, Xuanmu was definitely akin to a rare treasure. Apart from his own potential and prominent background, merely the fact that he was now ranked among the top 20 as a freshman was enough for them to amplify the hype and turn him into the genius of the century. Now, he was the leader among the new students. How many would come to challenge him? How many new, trendy topics would there now be? Moreover, Xuanmu had a face that was so beautiful that even women would cry out in envy. Think of all those female students who had just lost their minds in infatuation. They were identical to countless walking money. Whose money was it the easiest to earn? Women's. The rise in popularity of the city was beneficial for everyone. Almost all the residents attended the ceremony. They were all rather curious because the city had never before seen a genius that could attract so much attention. No one in Central Pine City had ever made it into the top 100, much less the top 20. The highest ranking of Central Pine Academy students had hitherto been 292. A lump of fiery floating cloud was soaring through the air. Xuanhuan was elegantly seated upon the fiery floating cloud, but his handsome and devilishly attractive face carried with it a tinge of weariness. It was indeed a heavy burden, to both his spirit and body, to consecutively challenge a large number of competitive rivals. When he could finally glimpse the outline of Central Pine City, Xuanmu heaved a long sigh of relief. He had purposefully set out overnight to avoid those crazy female students. The past several days had been a literal nightmare to him. He believed that the misfortune had started from that insufferable task that teacher Su had assigned to him. When he looked back at those unbearable memories, he felt fury begin to well up within him, especially when he remembered the day when he had to refuse Gu Tianning's challenge because of his puffy face, which had earned him the name of a coward. Even though Xuanmu had endured through the immense shame, he really had not expected that every Tom, Dick, and Harry would want to duel with him after they heard of his refusal to accept Tianning's challenge. Having held in his anger for so long, Xuanmu eventually could not take it anymore, and finally flared up. That was why he thrashed the challengers without even saying a word. Moreover, in his violent rage, he had rushed straight to all the training halls and battered those foreign masters, who had come to experience the blind battles, to a pulp. However, Xuanmu's anger was still not completely vented. Heaven only knew how many more outlets he needed. Therefore, his next move was to rush out of Central Pine City, but the first person he encountered was Gu Tianning, the source of his grievances. When he thought of his puffy face and the taunts that were coming from outside, he felt an unspeakable humiliation. In the end, Xuanmu thought of only one thing, which was to fight. His fury was almost driving him insane, and there was only a single thought that was constantly echoing in his mind. I want to vent. I want to vent. However, now, after having challenged another two strong opponents, Xuanhuan was finally exhausted, and his rage was somewhat eased. He felt much more placid now. As for the invitations from other schools, he threw them into the dustbin without even a glimpse. Stand up from where he had fallen. He could not let Ai Hui off the hook so easily. He would not leave Central Pine Academy unless the resentment between them was settled. His intent for revenge was indeed hard to curb. When he thought of his puffy face, the killer intent within him became slightly uncontrollable. He did not even have the courage to recall that horrible scene. Damn! It was all because of Ai Hui. He was his nightmare, and he must destroy him. Noticing the welcoming crowd at the city gate, he gracefully smoothed down his clothes, held his chin high and raised his head. His face returned to being cold and devilishly charming. His vanity was greatly content as he returned as a triumphant hero. Under the burning gazes of the crowd, the fiery floating cloud stopped unhurriedly at the city gate. Everyone behind the gate held their breath. Xuanhuan's cold yet handsome face quickly attracted attention. His tall and slender figure revealed his graceful temperament, and his gorgeous clothing, which was stained from travel, seemed to narrate a unique story of its owner's honor and achievement. The unprecedented genius of the entire induction ground. An absolute idol among the new students. The fiery floating cloud steadily hovered several inches away from the ground. Xuanhuan, who was being stared at by thousands of people, effortlessly and dignifiedly stepped down from the fiery floating cloud like a valiant, glorious hero. Oh, hello, Bangwan. You are here too. That voice had constantly lurked about in his nightmares, but now, from behind, it suddenly reached his ears like a thunderclap. Xuanmu seriously could not prepare for such an unexpected occurrence, and almost instinctively, his pupils dilated and his body stiffened, as he staggered and missed his step. With a resounding thud, Xuanhuan fell to the ground like a rigid stake. Everyone instantly fell silent. Chapter 37. Noodle House. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Cynthia. Editor. Pranav Ai Hui had no intention to greet Xuanhuan since he did not know him very well, and so had just planned to ignore him. However, Xuanmu's fiery floating cloud had stopped right in front the gate and blocked the way. Moreover, it seemed to take ages for him just to step off the cloud. Ai Hui waited, and waited, until he eventually became really impatient, and greeted, "Hello, out loud to remind that Bangwan that someone was waiting behind him and to please be quick. However, right afterward, looking at the fallen Xuanmu's face, Ai Hui felt contempt for his psychological weakness. His voice had been barely above a whisper. How could someone be so fearful? What about those dire beasts with their thundering roars in the wilderness? This guy would simply be frightened to death. Maybe the kids nowadays were like this. Anyhow, Ai Hui had always regarded him as childish. Other than training, Ai Hui had never cared too much about anything else. As for the large crowd of people waiting at the city gate, well, what did it have to do with him? When he arrived back at the training hall, he noticed that it was spotlessly clean. As usual, Lu Lan had done a good job. Now, however, Lu Lan was not present, which left Ai Hui to be free. After finishing his shower, Ai Hui noticed that Lu Lan was still missing. All his hopes were dashed. It seemed like there would be no soup today. As it was still early, he decided to head out and have some noodles. Yes, noodles, which would cost him 150 yuan for a single bowl. After all, now that he had 350,000 yuan on hand, he considered himself to be rather rich and could eat as much as he liked. Ai Hui had only been eating pancakes for the past month, and his mouth watered at just the thought of those noodles. He immediately rushed out through the door. Xuanhuan wandered the streets of Central Pine City without any specific destination. She had heard about the big welcoming ceremony for Xuanhuan, but unfortunately, she could not witness it for herself. She had also learned from Uncle Yongzheng that after jumping off the fiery floating cloud, Xuanmu had toppled over onto the ground in exhaustion. People were marveling at the hardship he had endured through to attain his current achievement. Xuanhuan also admired his unprecedented feat of consecutively challenging 3 experts of the top 50 in just 1 week. It truly was no surprise that he was exhausted. She herself had only managed to achieve the top 100 during her first year of college. It was no wonder that Xuanhuan was being honored as the genius of the century. Nevertheless, she had no interest in Xuanhuan, she was only interested in that mysterious expert who had defeated her. She once suspected that Xuanhuan might be the one, but had shortly rejected the notion. Xuanhuan was of an apparent noble temperament, totally different from that of the mysterious master. Xuanhuan was wearing an elemental energy mask to avoid being recognized by others, and now, she appeared to be an ordinary girl student. Ever since that fateful blind battle, she would often come to Central Pine City in her free time, and she soon became familiar with its topography. In fact, she was presently enjoying the feeling of strolling aimlessly after an intense training session. Detecting a mouth-watering aroma of food, Xuanhuan suddenly began to feel hungry. Turning to the source, she noticed a noodle house. Actually, she seldom ate out at restaurants. To be more specific, she seldom ate anything except elemental food. On account of her constant training, she was stringent with her diet. Her daily diet only consisted of elemental food that was specially made for enhancing the results of her training. Therefore, she hesitated. But she eventually succumbed to the temptation. As it was not yet mealtime, there were only a few customers in the noodle house. The owner was engrossed in preparing spiced beef, causing an irresistible smell to linger in the air. She casually entered, sat at a table, and requested a bowl of noodles. At that instant, a figure rushed in and sat at a table across from her. 5 bowls of noodles, please. Xuanhuan took a brief glance and realized that it was a male student who seemed familiar. She might have seen him somewhere before. After pondering for a while, she remembered that last time in Central Pine City, while she was fuming over all the colorful banners advertising blind battles, she had noticed a mocking gaze coming from across the street. From this guy. Last time, although Xuanhuan was filled with self-confidence, she had made a mistake, and now she felt slightly embarrassed. However, she was not annoyed with the boy because they were unfamiliar with each other. Admittedly, she was in a rotten mood at that time, and she seemed to have given him an angry glance. She smiled wryly. Just then, her noodles arrived, and she began to enjoy her delicious meal. The noodles were incredibly tasty and totally different from the elemental food that she was used to. Try as she might, she could not stop eating. Compared to her, though, the actions of the fellow seated opposite were far more exaggerated. He swept through the 5 large bowls of noodles in a line like the wind sweeping the leaves, causing a scene that was of great visual impact. Furthermore, his table manners were rude and wild, and with each bite, half the noodles of a bowl would disappear. Xuanhuan, who had happened to take a glimpse, was left stunned. All the people she knew were restrained, elegant, and gentle while eating. She had never before seen anyone eat like him. At the beginning, Ai Hui had noticed her since she had stared at him for a while, but having already adapted to life in the induction ground, he did not regard it as anything dangerous. Now, he was so focused on the noodles that he had already forgotten himself. He picked up a bowl and gulped down half the noodle soup before placing it down contentedly. He suddenly noticed the stupefied lady sitting across from him. Xuanhuan met his gaze, but she immediately realized that it was somewhat rude and quickly looked down. In an attempt to cover her embarrassment, she hastily called the owner to bring her the bill. "That would be 150 yuan, please," said the owner monotonously. "Okay," replied Xuanhuan as she rummaged about for her purse. However, she suddenly froze, because she realized one horrible thing: she did not take any money with her. She had taken a shower and changed her attire after training, but the purse was still in her previous clothes. What to do? She had never encountered anything like this and totally blanked out. "Excuse me, lady." Noticing her absence of mind, the owner gently gave another reminder. "Sorry that I forgot to bring money." Xuanhuan stammered, her face burning with shame. At this moment, she felt like hiding herself and disappearing. The owner's expression darkened. Ai Hui noticed the scene. Looking at the lady's face, which was almost buried in her arms, he shook his head to himself and said, "Hey, I'll lend you the money. Give me something as a pledge, and I'll return it to you once you pay me back." Would he freely pay the bill? No. Ai Hui would never utter such profligate words. 150 yuan was a lot of money to him. If there was nothing to pledge, he would not lend the money. He was not one to show sympathy, and simply his willingness to lend was already a great favor in his eyes. He then took out the money and pointed to the bowls in front of him. "Bill, please." Having paid for the meals, Ai Hui strolled out of the noodle house with a toothpick in his mouth and Xuanhuan's bead bracelet in his hand. Xuanhuan sincerely expressed her gratitude to Ai Hui. "Thank you. I will definitely pay you back. Please give me your address." Vanguard Training Hall. Ai Hui continued, "Bring the money, and I'll give you the bracelet. Go home and get the money quickly. I'm leaving now." Noticing the decreasing sunlight, Ai Hui hastily corrected himself. Tomorrow would also be fine. Farewell. He quietly waved goodbye, without taking the clouds away from the sky. Superscript 1 note. 1. The original text is extracted from a modern poem which is well known in China. Basically, it means, "he left." Chapter 38. The Inner Demon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator Cynthia. Editor Pranav. When Xuanhuan returned to the Shi clan training hall, she asked Uncle Yongzheng, "Do you know where Vanguard Training Hall is?" Vanguard Training Hall. After mulling over for a while, he shook his head. "No. There is no such training hall. Where did you learn about it?" He had been responsible for the Shi clan training hall of Central Pine City for a very long time, and therefore, he was familiar with everything about the city, especially with matters concerning training halls. He was literally 100% sure that there was no such training hall in Central Pine City. Now that the young mistress had mentioned such a bizarre place, though, he was seized with a feeling of foreboding. He was not worried about her safety at all because he clearly knew of her strength. However, having grown up in a relatively simple environment where she cared about nothing but training, she was naive and ignorant to the various ways of the world. This kind of girl would easily be cheated. Xuanhuan described what had happened. Yongjing felt even more uneasy. The bead bracelet was the one you are always wearing. Yes, that was the only thing I could pledge. It is grandmother's memento, so I always wear it. She noticed the change in Uncle Yongjing's facial expression. Uncle Yongjing, was there any problem with that guy? When he heard that the bracelet was Xuanhuan's grandmother's memento, Yongjing felt himself break out in a cold sweat. The bead bracelet was made of calming indigo silk, which was produced by a wild beast known as the winged indigo silk bird. However, due to its sparse production, it was extremely precious. Even in the cultivation era, such beads were invaluable. Moreover, this bracelet was handed down by Xuanhuan's grandmother. He was aware of the identity and status of Xuanhuan's grandmother. If this bracelet was lost in Central Pine City, which was under his jurisdiction, then how could he afford to take the responsibility? I'll go check right now. Yongjing hastily rushed out, leaving everything else behind. Xuanhuan was not a sophisticated woman, but she was clever. Looking at Uncle Yongjing's nervousness, she immediately understood what he was thinking. However, she was not as worried, because although the bead bracelet was given as a pledge, it was she who had offered to do so. Therefore, she did not really believe it was a scam. After a while, Yongjing returned, sweat dripping down his face. Young mistress, I got it. There is indeed a Vanguard training hall which had been closed for a long time. Recently a student moved in to do the cleaning and maintenance. Thank you, uncle. Please give me the address. I'll go there myself. Xuanhuan felt relieved. She was not worried of being cheated, as she was confident of getting back anything within the whole induction ground, let alone the small Central Pine City. She just did not want to see a kind deed turn out to be a scam, which would really make her unhappy. Yongjing was also relieved. Thank goodness it was not a scam. He hurriedly handed the address to Xuanhuan. As for her safety, Yongjing was not worried at all. He had long witnessed her powerful fighting abilities. Along with the address and money, Xuanhuan headed out. After the welcome ceremony, Xuanhuan withdrew to his new residence. Due to his excellent contribution, the academy had arranged another place as his accommodation, which possessed the highest elemental energy concentration and was fitted with luxurious interior decorations. Xuanhuan could now finally relax and have some rest. These days he had been constantly worn out. He had held on till now because of the resentment in his heart, but now that it was released, he was overwhelmed with fatigue. Lying in bed, however, he could not fall asleep. His mind could not help but wander to the awkward tumble at the city gate. Ever since his birth, he had never done anything so shameful. Under everybody's keen attention and at the most awe-inspiring moment of his life, he had totally disgraced himself. The more he thought about it, the more furious he became. Damn it! He himself was clueless to why he tumbled on hearing Ai Hui's voice at the time. After pondering for a while, Xuanhuan unconsciously sat up as he began to feel serious. A horrible phrase had suddenly occurred to him, inner demons. The more he thought about it, the more he believed it to be true. Ai Hui's voice was indeed like a nightmare to him, and this was definitely an inner demon. As a genius in training, Xuanhuan had always had a sharp intuition. Having analyzed his abnormal reactions in front of Ai Hui, he knew that his judgment was right. Inner demons were actually not that rare in the process of training, especially to geniuses of higher levels. Xuanhuan had learned about this from many books and records. Inner demons were able to influence one's training, somewhat similar to a psychological barrier. As one's base level increased, the requirement for a perfect mental state would become more demanding, although it may be different depending on the type of technique practiced. Some techniques would require practitioners to be aggressive and determined, while even the slightest fear may prevent them from going any further, whereas some techniques necessitated a tranquility and indifference in one's mind, and if a practitioner could not free himself from worldly attachments, it would be hard to attain success in that technique. Inner demons had always had a big influence on one's training. The affected person may find it hard to improve. In serious cases, one might even develop an obsession that would cost his or her life. Last time, when he had opened his eyes in the biting cold, he had almost been traumatized by the palm prints all over his body. At the thought of this, his face began to burn. When he remembered his old puffy face, a furious flame blazed out in his chest, and when he recalled today's awkwardness, he felt as if a bowl of hot oil was directly poured to the flames in him. Hatred. Old and new. Xuanhuan's eyes grew red in fury. He was now 100% sure that Ai Hui was the demon in his heart. He thought back to a set phrase in training that he had read before, demon decapitation. Only when one's inner demons were decapitated would one be able to return to the right path and prevent oneself from going astray. Demon decapitation did not necessarily mean the decapitation of the person who is the demon, but like untying a knot, one had to get over it by oneself. Xuanhuan decided to decapitate his inner demon. It was a problem that he had ignored previously, and today, he would solve it entirely and release himself from his rage. Xuanmu was quite certain of success, since Ai Hui's natal palace hadn't even been opened, he definitely had a negligible level of skill. On the other hand, Xuanmu had just defeated 3 of the top 50 rivals. To him, small potatoes like Ai Hui would be more than simple to defeat. He had not done this before merely because of the task assigned by Teacher Su. Xuanhuan, who was now fully confident, began to think about how he should go about decapitating his inner demon. Should he disgrace Ai Hui just as how Ai Hui had disgraced him? Once this idea occurred to him, Xuanmu became exhilarated. Yes, that was it. He thought over each step. First, make him catch a cold, and then treat it in the way as Ai Hui had done. He would pay him back in his own coin. Ah, and don't forget the puffy face. And the tumble. A cold, evil grin appeared on Xuanhuan's face. Ai Hui, just wait and enjoy the treat. Xuanhuan could not help but let out a wild, wicked cackle. Mwahahaha. Xuanmu, lost in his great excitement, could not feel the fatigue in his body anymore as he grabbed an elemental energy mask and put it on his face. He could not wait to begin. Chapter 39. Sword Dance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Irene Editor. Prana Vanguard Training Hall. Ai Hui dragged the rattan chair into the garden and plopped himself down in satisfaction. The quiet hall, the gentle light reflecting off the calabashes, the bright moon. They all made him feel exceptionally comfortable and calm. No clamor, no battle, no tension. His body and mind were both relaxed, making him feel slightly lazy. When he had been in the swordsman school, he had enjoyed spending the nights like that. He would empty his mind, completely at leisure and carefree. The rattan chair rocked on as the moonlight caressed his body. He was facing the open entrance. The noise coming from outside would pass through the deep alley and become muffled by the time it reached the training hall, but it added a touch of liveliness to the night. As Ai Hui fiddled with the bead bracelet he recently received, he sensed that it was cool to the touch and very comfortable to hold. He was not sure if it was because of the pearl or the quiet night, but right now, he felt incredibly tranquil. Calming indigo silk. Lu Lan entered and noticed the bracelet in Ai Hui's hands. A yellow light flashed through his eyes before he offered an objective assessment. The calming indigo silk is of fine quality. Is it worth a lot? Ai Hui continued to sway on his rattan chair. A young lady's collateral, 150 yuan. Very valuable. Lu Lan nodded, the bizarre light within his eyes dimmed as he settled down beside Ai Hui. You've made great progress. Ah, and your body is more robust too. Such speed will allow you to charge for the natal residences in no time. While more. AI Hui shook his head. I hope to temper my body first. The metal wind has a great effect on my body, so I'll accumulate a little more before going for the residence. That way I'll be more confident. Lu Lan crooked his head. If that's the case, then I shall make some blood. And bone strengthening cake. It's very effective. Thanks, Lu Lan. As an afterthought, AI Hui asked, is it expensive? Not expensive. 100,000 yuan worth of blood and bone strengthening cake can last you a month, Lu Lan calculated. 100,000 not expensive. AI Hui choked. He just could not link 100,000 and not expensive together. However, since Lu Lan mentioned that the effect was quite good, he was convinced. He knew that Lu Lan would never speak without thinking and that the cake was sure to be quite effective. Whether it was the elemental energy replenishing soup or the bone strengthening soup, they had all been extraordinarily effective. Okay. AI Hui clenched his teeth. 100,000 yuan, let's do it. AI Hui had sharp eyes, and he noticed a slight change in the sand from Lu Lan's body. Lu Lan, your skin color seems a bit off. Yes. I have the capability to learn how to battle. Lu Lan realized that he had to explain further. Master Xiao said that I wasn't created to battle, so there is no specific combat technique for me, but he said that I'm not weak when it comes to battling. AI Hui stared blankly. I don't understand. That is to say, I can obtain battle skills through learning. Lu Lan continued, but this requires time. I have been learning some basic techniques recently and they bring about a change to the nature of my elemental energy, so the color of my sand will change too. AI Hui finally understood. Oh, so it's like that. But I have a question. Can you help me? Of course. AI Hui was certain. Ask away. I've seen many battle manuals that talked about weapons. What kind should I choose? Weapon. AI Hui muttered, you do not even need weapons since your body is your best weapon. Body. Lu Lan looked doubtful. Yes. AI Hui sat up straight and his expression became earnest. You can shape-shift as you please, you can become soft, you can become hard. Aren't you your best weapon? Battling may be complicated, but it can also be very simple. Just like last time, you became a sand cloud and disturbed his vision, disconnecting the link between his hellfire spider web and himself. That was amazing. It is the key to scoring more victories. It is. Lu Lan rejoiced upon hearing a compliment. Yes, you are actually very powerful. As long as you can use your body well, you'll be in an invincible position. AI Hui looked serious. Battling is when you utilize your advantage to attack your opponent's weakness. AI Hui, you're amazing. You know so much. Lu Lan was full of admiration, but then he peered at AI Hui curiously. Then what weapon do you use? I use a sword. Lu Lan recalled the grass sword in the room and realization dawned on him. Come to think of it, you do have a grass sword, but I've never seen you use it. Give me a second. AI Hui also was feeling that he had not touched his sword for a very long time and momentarily felt his hand itch. He turned and ran to the room to retrieve it. Once the sword was in his hands, he felt the sword embryo between his brows come to life. The feeling that he had not experienced in a long time stimulated him. When Lu Lan saw AI Hui walk in with the sword in his hand, he tilted his head and muttered to himself, AI Hui seems different. AI Hui saw the moonlight shimmering like water, and his longing for the sword embryo state made him feel like dancing. Without thinking, he held his sword up toward the sky. His dark, glimmering eyes were unmeasurably deep. A faint yet cool aura surrounded AI Hui's body and filled the air. His heart was as calm as water. It was as if countless sword manuals were suddenly blown open by the wind as the sword moves within the sheets came alive. They seemed to slowly float out of the pages and form many lively miniature figures. Ai Hui started to waltz with his grass sword. The grass sword, which was made from sword reeds, was about 4 fingers wide, 3 pounds heavy, and naturally sharp. Ai Hui's movements were slow, he moved at a speed akin to that of an old lady. The air around him, however, seemed to solidify and thicken as he continued with his dance. In the wilderness, Ai Hui's development of the elemental energy had not produced much results, and so when he finally developed his meager strands of elemental energy, he did not dare to carelessly waste it. He only used it in times of extreme danger. He utilized sword moves the most. Ever since he had created a sword embryo, he had found sword moves to be very advantageous. It also made him realize that amongst the piles of sword manuals, there was also some useful information hidden within. Moreover, at that point in time, in the wilderness, he had no other choice. He had tried all the skills in the manual a few times before finally finding some usable ones. They were all mainly simple, superficial techniques. He thought about it and it made sense. The more powerful moves required a greater spiritual force and thus were no longer useful. Contrarily, the simple, shallow techniques involved the operation of energy from the muscles and were hence more effective in today's era. The pace of Ai Hui's sword dance increased and he appeared to be extremely focused. Although the tip of the grass sword had no shine, the sword was reflecting the moonlight, making it float about the surroundings like a silverfish playing chase. It was indeed a heavenly sight. He did not notice that there was someone by the door. Xuanhuan was extremely shocked. She had not expected to see such breathtaking swordplay in this city. Sword lessons were taught in the induction ground too, but she had never seen such beautiful swordsmanship. Could he be Central Pine City's hidden talent? All of a sudden, Xuanhuan's gaze fell onto the pearl that was on Ai Hui's wrist. Her head throbbed as her face quickly turned pale. Chapter 40. 80 million worth of rage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. JL Editor. Pranav Xuanhuan could hardly believe her eyes. The calming indigo silk on Ai Hui's wrist was like a candle placed above a fire grill, gradually melting into gluey liquid, as it unceasingly penetrated into Ai Hui's skin. It was as if she had experienced a mental blow, her mind went blank. That was the treasure that her deceased grandmother had given her. She had been wearing it ever since she was young and hardly took it off. Looking at it was akin to looking back at her loving grandmother who would constantly dote on her. She still remembered the time her grandmother had given her the bracelet. Her grandmother had smiled while saying, "My darling granddaughter, you must take good care of this calming indigo silk. When you grow up and meet your Mr. Right, give this string of calming indigo silk to him. This is the best token of love that you can give." It was produced by the winged indigo silk bird. But Xuanhuan regained her senses and bolted forward. Her voice laced with tears, she cried out, "My beads." Ai Hui quivered and was immediately jolted out of the sword embryo state. He realized that it was the young girl from the noodle shop and remarked, "Oh, it's you. Why are you crying? Give me 150 yuan and I will return the beads." Following which, Ai Hui touched his wrist and was instantly shocked motionless. Something doesn't feel right. Pausing momentarily, he looked down at his wrist and became flabbergasted. There was only a bare string on his wrist. Where were the beads? He looked to the floor but there were no signs of the beads anywhere. "Ai Hui, the pearls have been absorbed into your skin," Lu Lan said honestly. "Absorbed into my skin?" Ai Hui was struck dumb. What sort of situation was this? How could it be absorbed? He hurriedly checked his body. When he noticed that the surrounding of the sword embryo seed had an additional circle of blue mist, he could not help but take in a deep breath. Indeed, it had been absorbed by him. Ai Hui felt as if his heart had been trampled by a herd of running wild cows. Looking at the young girl from the noodle store, whose eyes were filled with tears, Ai Hui was at loss. I am sorry. I did not mean to do it. You need not give me the 150. The moment the words left his mouth, Ai Hui knew he said the wrong thing. Instantly, the teary eyes of the girl became menacing. Ai Hui hurriedly added, I will pay. I will pay. That was a treasure that belonged to my deceased grandmother, Xuanhuan cried out. Ai Hui was completely nonplussed, his intestines turned green with regret. If he had known that earlier, he would not have asked for a collateral and would have instead freely treated her to that bowl of noodles. This was indeed his fault. He could only say meekly, this was my fault, I'm sorry, I am really sorry. I truly did not know things would turn out this way. I have no idea how I managed to absorb this item. Would it be alright if I compensate you? Xuanhuan gradually calmed down a little. How will you compensate? She had witnessed the whole process for herself. In her mind, she knew that the other party did it unintentionally, and she, too, had never heard of calming indigo silk being absorbed before. I have 250,000 yuan. I will give it all to you. While Ai Hui was unwilling to part with his money, he knew that he did not have other alternatives. This was indeed his fault and he could not bring himself to put the blame on others. 250,000 yuan. Xuanhuan laughed coldly. Is it not sufficient? Ai Hui was momentarily struck dumb. A hefty amount of 250,000 was not sufficient for that string of worn out, blue pearls. Lu Lan, who was standing nearby, interjected, Ai Hui, the average starting price of calming indigo silk is usually 3 million yuan. This string of high-quality silk should be more than 5 million. Xuanhuan glanced at Lu Lan. She was clearly aware that sand puppets who knew the market price of calming indigo silk were quite rare. She replied expressionlessly, this string of calming indigo silk was of the utmost quality and thus, the bracelet was worth 80 million yuan. 80.80 million yuan. Ai Hui felt as if he was struck by a lightning bolt that was as thick as a water bucket. He was utterly devastated. His mouth dropped open and his eyeballs almost popped out of his sockets. Every single muscle on his body was as rigid as steel. Ai Hui felt like countless somber shadows were cast upon his life. 80 million. Oh, Grand Aunt, what were you trying to accomplish by parading across the city with beads worth 80 million yuan? Oh, Grand Aunt, you had brought out pearls worth 80 million yuan, but why could you not even bring out 150 yuan in cash? How big of an amount do you think 150 yuan was, for you to use an 80 million yuan bead bracelet as collateral? Sword embryo, you disgraceful fellow. How dare you absorb that string of beads that were worth 80 million yuan? How black-hearted are you? You are even worse than fatty. 80 million, my why? Ai Hui did not know what to do. He had gone through a lot in his life, having experienced many life-threatening incidents in his time in the wilderness, but those experiences were thoroughly useless for the current situation. He would rather face every single wild beast in the wilderness than face this young girl from the noodle shop. One thing was sure, though, that even if he sold himself, he would still be unable to earn 80 million yuan. Well, Ai Hui had nothing to lose now. I have no idea what to do. Even if you put me for sale, I am not worth 80 million yuan. Noodle shop girl, I will do whatever you say. I will definitely not renege on this debt. Humph. If it wasn't for the fact that you did it unintentionally, you would have been dead today, Xuanhuan said coldly. Ai Hui glared at Xuanhuan in fury and wanted to say, a gentleman can be killed but not humiliated. However, under the direct, ominous gaze of Xuanhuan, he simply muttered under his breath and turned around. That damned sword embryo. Why couldn't he be like Fatty? If he was Fatty, he would have said something pretentiously, like, if I owe you money, I am your master. Given that I owe you 80 million yuan, I am the master of masters. You should wait upon me. Fine. He had some morals after all and was unable to commit such a shameless act. Ai Hui was crestfallen. For a moment, Xuanhuan was also at a loss. The calming indigo silk was gone. Should she kill this person? No matter what had happened, the person did help her out of goodwill at the noodle house. She had also observed the entire process of the calming indigo silk being absorbed and she knew that it was unintentional. Make him pay. Even if she sold this chap, the amount she would get would definitely not be sufficient to cover the 80 million yuan worth calming indigo silk. Bash him. That would be letting him off too easily. At that moment, Xuanhuan was feeling sullen and down. In truth, she did not care about that 80 million, but her heart was broken beyond repair over losing her grandmother's treasure. Hence, Xuanhuan could not bring herself to just let him go either. The two of them silently faced each other, rigidly standing. Lu Lan was speechless as looked at the two of them. He added weakly, while it might not be of much use, I have 250,000 yuan. Ai Hui shook his head. I should own up to my own wrongdoings, Lu Lan. I do not need your money. Xuanhuan gave a cold humph again and kept silent. Suddenly, Ai Hui violently turned and looked upwards to the fence. Who's there? At the very same moment, Xuanhuan fiercely turned towards the fence and asked, Who's there? The two of them had spoken in unison. Heh heh. An evil cackle was heard as a black figure appeared on top of the fence. Xuanhuan had sharp eyes and instantly recognized that the opposite party was wearing an elemental energy mask. With a voice that sounded like she was forcing the words through her teeth, she indignantly asked, Why are you acting so mysterious? She had completely forgotten that she, too, was wearing an elemental energy mask. Ai Hui, I can't believe you actually have a sweetheart, the dark figure on the fence exclaimed eerily. Sweetheart. Ai Hui and Xuanhuan simultaneously furrowed their brows. Was this chap worthy to be called my sweetheart? The rage, which had been restrained by Xuanhuan the entire night, instantly erupted. Pfft. I do not want a sweetheart who doesn't even bring out 150 yuan. She resulted in me being extorted by that damned sword embryo of a hefty amount of 80 million yuan. The fury that Ai Hui had been holding back also exploded. Xuanhuan's figure turned green as it disappeared from its position. With a gloomy expression, Ai Hui wordlessly charged forward with his sword.